Good morning, guys. Happy November 7th. Happy Monday. I am going to be reading a chapter in Mark today. We read through all of Matthew pretty consistently, and Mark has not been so consistent. Normally I'd like to be reading by 9 a.m. Monday to Friday, but through sickness and things coming up and having to be to work early and laziness, we haven't been on our game. But I am back here reading with you guys. We're gonna be reading Mark 6. I do my own reading every day on my own, but I'm doing this so that you guys can also get a chance to listen in if you haven't had the time to sit down and open your own book yet. And it's also fun to read along with people. And so here we go. Mark 6. I'm reading the New Living Translation. Verse 1. Jesus left that part of the country and returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath he began teaching in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. They asked, "Where did he get all the wisdom and power to perform such miracles?" They scoffed. "He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon. And his sisters live right here among us." They were deeply offended and refused to believe in him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his relatives and his own family." And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them except to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their unbelief. Then Jesus went from village to village, teaching the people. And he called his 12 disciples together and began sending them out 2 by 2, giving them authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them to take nothing for their journey except a walking stick, no food, no traveler's bag, no money. He allowed them to wear sandals, but not to take a change of clothes. "Wherever you go," he said, "stay in the same house until you leave town. But if any place refuses to welcome you or listen to you, shake its dust from your feet as you leave to show that you have abandoned those people to their fate." So the disciples went out, telling everyone they met to repent of their sins and turn to God. And they cast out many demons and healed many sick people, anointing them with olive oil. The death of John the Baptist. Herod Antipas, the king, soon heard about Jesus because everyone was talking about him. Some were saying, "This must be John the Baptist raised from the dead. That is why he can do such miracles." Others said, "He's the prophet Elijah." Still others said, "He's a prophet like the other great prophets of the past." When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, "John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead." For Herod had sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias. She had been his brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. John had been telling Herod, "It is against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife." So Herodias bore a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But without Herod's approval, she was powerless. For Herod respected John, and knowing he was a good and holy man, he protected him. Herod was greatly disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so, he liked to listen to him. Herodias' chance finally came on Herod's birthday. He gave a party for his high government officials, army officers, and the leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, also named Herodias, came in and performed a dance and greatly pleased Herod and his guests. "Ask me for anything you like," the king said to the girl, "and I will give it to you." He even vowed, I will give you whatever you ask, up to half my kingdom." She went out and asked her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother told her, "Ask for the head of John the Baptist." So the girl hurried back to the king and told him, "I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray." Then the king deeply regretted what he said, but because of the vows he had made in front of his guests, he couldn't refuse her. So he immediately sent out an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and bring it back to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison, brought his head on a tray, and gave it to the girl, who took it to her mother. When John's disciples heard what had happened, they came to get his body and bury it in a tomb. Verse 30, Jesus feeds 5,000. The apostles returned to Jesus from the ministry tour and told him all they had done and taught. Then Jesus said, "Let's go off by ourselves to a quiet place and rest a while." He said this because there were so many people coming and going, and Jesus and his apostles didn't even have time to eat. So they left by boat for a quiet place where they could be alone. But many people recognized them and saw them leaving, and people from many towns ran ahead along the shore and got there ahead of him. Jesus saw huge crowds as he stepped down from the boat, and he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." But Jesus said, "You feed them." "With what?" they asked. "We'd have to work for months to earn money to buy food for all these people." "How much bread do you have?" he asked. "Go and find out." They came back and reported, "We have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Then Jesus told the disciples to have the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in groups of 50 or 100. Jesus took the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looked up toward heaven, and blessed them. Then breaking the loaves into pieces, he kept giving the bread to the disciples so they can distribute it to people. He also divided the fish for everyone to share. They all ate as much as they wanted, and afterwards the disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover bread and fish. A total of 5,000 men and their families were fed. Jesus walks on water. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida. While he sent the people home, after telling everyone goodbye, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in their boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the winds and the waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on water. He intended to go past them, but when they saw him walking on water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. They were all terrified when they saw him, but Jesus spoke to them at once. "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage. I am here." Then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped. They were totally amazed, for they still did not understand the significance of the miracles of the loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. After they had crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret. They brought the boat to shore and climbed out. The people recognized Jesus at once, and they ran throughout the whole area carrying sick people on mats to wherever they heard he was. Whenever he went in villages, cities, or the countryside, they brought the sick out to the marketplaces. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. So that's the end of chapter 6. there's a couple different things happening in chapter 6. So it begins with Jesus being rejected. And I think it's really interesting that Jesus says a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his relatives and his own family. Jesus is doing all these miracles, and when he's in his hometown where he grew up, they're like, who is this? We know him. He's the brother of Mary. I mean, he's the son of Mary and the brother of James, and his sisters live among us. He's not special. He's from here. It's just like, like, in your own hometown, people are like, oh, we know them. So it's not that great. They're not that great. We grew up with him. We saw when he tripped. We saw, like, they're devaluing him because they think they know him, and because they think because they're looking at him from his past and from their perception. They can't look at who he is right now and what he's doing right now, and they're missing the miracles he's doing because they're so caught up in what they think they know about him and his past. And so I think that's really interesting, and something to hold on to is when Jesus says a prophet is honored everywhere except in his hometown and among his relatives and his own family, because sometimes we might be doing something and, you tell the people around you and they might not see the value in what you're doing, but total strangers might support you. If you're given a vision or given a command from God and you go to act on it and people in your circle don't believe in you, just know that people in Jesus's immediate town where he grew up, where he was from, also didn't fully support him either. So just hold on to that. We also see the death of John the Baptist. We see the feeding of the 5,000, and we see Jesus walking on water, all in chapter 6. So there's a lot to go back to think about and meditate on that we just read. And I also want to just say that when Jesus was walking on water and all these people were freaking out, the disciples were freaking out because they're like, they couldn't really see him. And so they just automatically got scared. They thought it was a ghost. Jesus says, don't be afraid. Take courage. I am here. And so I just want to remind you, when things look a little bit blurry, when you're not really sure what's happening, hold on to Jesus's words. Do not be afraid. Take courage. Put that shield on. Put his armor on. And remember, he's right here with you. There's nothing to be afraid of. He's always with you. And make sure your heart doesn't get hardened towards him. Keep your heart open so that you can accept and be used by him for whatever he is trying to do in your life at that moment. So we're gonna end it there. Again, a lot happened in chapter 6. I will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. I hope you have a blessed day. Bye-bye.